So we got some interesting developments over the weekend coming out of Atlanta, and I imagine that they might start spreading to the rest of the country. Keisha Lance Bottoms, the mayor of Atlanta, who early on embraced the riots that were going on in her city, embraced the violence, said that, hey, people are being heard, they need room to express their grief. And she was nodding her head right along with them, and then even was very quick to condemn this officer who shot Rayshard Brooks. Rayshard Brooks, of course, was this guy who was, drunk, fell asleep in his car. The cops went to wake him up, and, I think they gave him a breathalyzer. He failed, so they went to arrest him, and he resisted and grabbed their taser, ran away, and tried to shoot the cop, and he got shot. Well, this mayor, was very quick to condemn the cop, and the cop's now been charged and indicted, and they've had a lot of problems in Atlanta with the police not wanting to show up because they're saying, hey, if I ever actually have to enforce the law, the prosecutors are going to throw the book at me. So what's the point in enforcing the law? I'll just stay home. And now things in Atlanta are starting to break down. They've got quite a bit of lawlessness. They've got armed thugs patrolling the streets in the area where Rayshard Brooks was killed, intimidating people who try and go into parking lots. And, we saw this the day after Rayshard Brooks was killed. There were people, pounding on cars that tried to go to Wendy's and said, no, you can't come to this Wendy's. This is sacred ground. You should go, buy your burgers from a black-owned business. I actually heard one woman shout that. Although, I still was confused at the time, and I'm still confused now. How do you know which burger shops are owned by black people? Is there some master list somewhere that I don't know about? But anyway, this has continued, and apparently it's spread to other parking lots in the area, not just Wendy's. And a couple of folks, 3 folks, I think, a woman, they said a friend, but I assume that they mean her boyfriend or something, and her daughter were, in their car, and they tried to pull over into one of these parking lots at night, and, one of the armed groups of armed thugs swarmed their car and said, hey, this is our parking lot, you're not coming in. We're remembering Rayshard Brooks and George Floyd, so how dare you desecrate their memory by pulling into this parking lot? And they, shot up the car and killed her 8-year-old daughter, who, by the way, everyone in the car was black. And so now, finally, I guess now that they killed a black kid, the mayor has decided that all of this has gone too far, that now the violence isn't good anymore. I guess that's, you just had to shake her and wake her up. And so now she's up and about. She says, it's been enough. It's time to go home. No more protesting. No more peaceful protesting. I guess these protesters are just too peaceful for her tastes, so peaceful that they're killing kids. And so now she's come around to where some of us were, immediately when all this started happening, that, hey, rioting and violence is bad. But, I guess welcome to the party, Keisha, but I think it's a little too late. The genie is out of the bottle. And I don't see how you're going to put it back in just by having the mayor, the man, essentially, although she's a woman, but still, she's the man, coming out and telling black folks they need to sit down and shut up. After everything that's been going on, after these folks have just come out and started, expressing themselves, you think that's going to work? And, for some extra oomph, she decided to bring out this poor mother to talk about her daughter, and, the mother said, hey, they say Black Lives Matter, but apparently my daughter's life doesn't matter. And she's damn right, because, the sloganeering, all the sloganeering in the world is not going to bring back her daughter. It's not going to make, killing a child justified. And so maybe this will get some of the normies off the streets, but the folks who are doing this obviously weren't normies. These are guys walking around with rifles and stuff, not exactly what you'd call law-abiding gun owners if they're murdering kids. And so I doubt they're going to be deterred. You might be able to get some of the, the few remaining, quote-unquote peaceful protesters off the streets. So you could say, well, then it'll be easier to narrow these people down because there won't be this this fog of war to where you have some folks who are unarmed and just holding up a sign and other folks who are gunning down kids. If all the normies do stay home, well, then all that leaves are the thugs to deal with who can be, swept up off the street. But who's going to do that? Is it going to be the Atlanta PD? I wouldn't do that if I were an Atlanta cop. I wouldn't want to try and go into this war zone, especially when I know that the city is liable to prosecute me if I kill one of these insurgents. So I have to say, this whole situation reminds me a bit of the French Revolution. How early on in the French Revolution, members of the elite who didn't like the king, who wanted to undermine him, jumped on board with the revolution and said, "Hey, I'm your guy. I'm just like you. I love what you're doing. All of your grievances, boy, they're justified." Like the Duke of Orleans, he came out. He used to host French revolutionaries at his not an estate, I guess his mansion in Paris. But eventually, what happened once he fed into this? He tried to use the French revolutionaries to unseat the King of France, Louis the 17th. I believe it was the 17th. No, it was the 16th. The 17th and 18th both died as children, I believe. So Louis the 16th, Duke of Orleans wanted to unseat him, and he thought these revolutionaries would overthrow Louis and install him, the Duke of Orleans, as the King of France. Well, that, as we know, did not happen. Although I believe Louis Philippe did later become the King of France, but after a bourgeois revolution, not sort of a much less extreme revolution than the revolution of 1791. And so the moral of the story is that you have to be careful when you're trying to utilize these radicals to further your own less radical political goals. Your pure political aspirations of wanting to achieve higher office, which is probably what Keisha and all these other politicians have been doing by trying to cheer on all of this unrest. Well, eventually you realize that they're going to come for you too. They don't like you. It's not that they dislike the guy who's in office or whoever they're going against, and they like you so much. No, they hate all of you. They want to burn it all down. And that's exactly what happened in France. That's why everyone started getting guillotined. That's why the French Revolution is remembered as one of the most decivilizing events in human history. Represented a great leap backwards for basic humanity. And we're experiencing something similar, though not nearly as violent yet. But we've got time. Very similar stuff. Seeing them destroy all of the artifacts of the old civilization, as I've talked about with not just the statues, everything. The statues are symbols, but the statues are not they're not the end goal. Destroying statues are a means to an end, not an end in of themselves. They want to destroy everything that has come before them, and they want to build their new society on top of the ashes of ours. That's why in France they abolished everything. They abolished the calendar. They abolished the church. They abolished all the estates. And so I think Keisha Bottoms is starting to realize that, and she's saying, we've had enough revolution for now. We need a little less. It reminds me of another instance, the revolution in Portugal. There was General Spinola said that, I believe, after they first overthrew the old government and Spinola came to power. Then people were still out in the streets, rioting and revolting. And he said, "We've had enough revolution. We got rid of Caetano. We don't need any revolution anymore." And the folks said, "No, we still want to revolt. We want to destroy everything." Old Keisha Bottoms, she's not about that. How is she supposed to, ascend politically in this country? How is she ever supposed to become the governor of Georgia or the president of the United States if there is no state of Georgia or United States, to rule? And so I think we got the first hint of the establishment turning against the revolution. It'll be very interesting to see how this responds, because this is not just an escalation like I've been tracking to where things have become more violent. It's not just a change in degree, it's a change of in form. And in fact, I might start to find this a little more entertaining once the establishment does turn against these people. Because then the movement, whatever you want to call it, will have to morph into something that is, more and more clearly anti-state. which of course is, is something that, an idea that in principle, I would tend to agree with. Well, I'm against the current state too. I just don't want whatever state that these people want to impose. And so it'll be much more fun for me to watch the entire establishment play defense against the mob. But of course, the question then is how many normies go along with them? If they do, retool or be transformed into, a purely anti-state entity, a group of people who are against the entire establishment, Democrat or Republican, who feel that all of these folks have failed them and should be overthrown in favor of some new system, how many normies will stick around? Versus how many normies will go along when Keisha Lance Bottoms says, hey, we've done enough protesting, it's time to end this, it's time to go home, it's over. That really is the big question to me now. And how long will it take for mayors in other cities to start echoing, Mrs. or Ms. Bottoms' words here? I believe it was Robert Higgs who said something to the effect of, the state only has power when its citizens fear it. And I wonder, how many people still fear their government in the same way that they used to. I wonder how many of these folks, with everything that's been going on now, feel empowered, and how many more people will feel empowered if they see them out in the streets in defiance of the government. But I think we still have a bit more time before that really can be tested, because, like I said, this is just one city that's just now starting to show a bit of apprehension towards the ongoing riots and unrest. We're a far cry from all the other cities doing the same and trying to wrap up this whole situation. So with that said, if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.